The transport ship docked at Terminus Station with a soft thud. Marcus Chen grabbed his single bag and stepped into the corridor. His eyes went wide as he looked around. Aliens of every shape and size moved through the busy hallways. Some had forearms. Others had scales that shimmered under the lights. A few floated instead of walking. Marcus bumped into a tall creature covered in blue fur. "Sorry. So sorry," he said quickly, his face turning red. The alien looked down at him with 6 eyes. "Watch where you walk, little human," it growled, before moving on. Marcus swallowed hard and checked his datapad. He was supposed to report to the station commander. Finding his way through this maze of strange beings seemed impossible. He stopped 3 different aliens to ask for directions. Each one looked at him like he was the stupidest creature they had ever seen. Finally, he found the command center. A tall alien with 4 arms and gray skin sat behind a large desk. This was Commander Vexari, the Kelthian, who ran Terminus Station. She studied Marcus with cold yellow eyes. "You are the new human?" she asked. Her voice sounded like stones grinding together. "Yes, Commander." "Marcus Chen. I'm here for the logistics position." He tried to stand straight, but his knees felt weak. Vexari made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Earth sends us a child to count boxes. How wonderful." She pressed a button on her desk. "You will work in cargo documentation. Building 7. Try not to get lost." Marcus nodded too many times. "Thank you, Commander. I won't let you down. I expect nothing from you, human. That way I will not be disappointed." Marcus hurried out of the office. His cheeks burned with embarrassment. But deep inside, behind his nervous eyes, something else flickered. Something that looked almost like satisfaction. Building 7 was old and dusty. Marcus found his desk in a corner where the lights buzzed and flickered. His job was simple. He would check cargo manifests, record weight measurements, and file reports that nobody would ever read. It was the most boring job on the entire station. His first week passed slowly. Marcus made many mistakes. He confused Torvion measurement units with Kelthian ones. He filed reports in the wrong folders. He spilled his drink on important documents. The other workers in his department, mostly aliens who had been doing this work for decades, shook their heads at him. Humans muttered a 3-eyed clerk named Burroughs. Cannot even count properly. Marcus apologized constantly. He stayed late trying to fix his errors. He asked questions that made everyone sigh with frustration. But he also watched. He watched everything. On his 8th day, a Torvian translator named Zira came to his desk. She had smooth purple skin and a kind smile that showed many small teeth. "You look lost, little human," she said. I am lost," Marcus admitted. "I don't understand anything here," Zira laughed. It was a pleasant sound. "Come, I will teach you how things work on this station. Someone should help you before you accidentally start a war by filing the wrong form." They became friends. Zira showed Marcus which aliens to avoid and which ones might help him. She explained the complicated politics between different species. She taught him phrases in 6 different languages. In return, Marcus told her stories about Earth. He described oceans and forests and cities full of humans. Zira found these stories fascinating. Her species had only met humans a few decades ago, and she had never visited their homeworld. "Your planet sounds beautiful, but dangerous," she said one evening as they shared a meal. "It made us who we are," Marcus replied. "We learned to survive there." Meanwhile, Marcus continued his boring work. He checked every cargo manifest with extreme care. He weighed every container twice. He noted every small difference between what the record said and what actually arrived. Most of his colleagues thought he was simply being overly careful because he was afraid of making more mistakes. They did not pay attention to the reports he filed. Nobody read them anyway, but Marcus filed them all. Every tiny detail, every small number that did not quite match. Every ship that arrived 3 minutes late or 2 minutes early. One night, Marcus stayed in his office very late. The station had grown quiet. Most workers had gone home. He was organizing files when he heard voices from the corridor outside. He recognized one voice. It belonged to a station official named Counselor Dreth. a fat alien with expensive clothes and greedy eyes. The other voice came from a communication device. Marcus pressed himself against the wall and listened. "The next shipment arrives in 4 days," Dreth was saying. "Make sure the weight records are adjusted before inspection." The voice on the device spoke in a language Marcus had never heard publicly used on the station. It was a Varaxian military code. Marcus knew this because he had studied it for 2 years before coming here. But nobody on this station knew that. "The payment will be transferred through the usual channels," the voice said. "Do not fail us again, counselor." The communication ended. Dreth walked away, his heavy footsteps fading into the distance. Marcus stayed frozen against the wall. His heart beat fast, but his eyes were calm and focused. This was exactly what he had been waiting for. He returned to his desk and opened his files. The small details he had been collecting suddenly formed a pattern. Cargo weights that did not match. Ships arriving at strange times. Certain containers that were never properly inspected. Someone was smuggling something through Terminus Station. Something big enough to require bribing high-ranking officials. Marcus closed his files and leaned back in his chair. For just a moment, his face changed. The nervous young clerk disappeared. In his place sat someone older, harder, and far more dangerous. Then the moment passed. Marcus yawned, stretched like a tired office worker, and gathered his things to go home. Tomorrow, he would continue being the station's most forgettable human. He would make more mistakes, ask more foolish questions, and file more reports that nobody would read. But now he knew he was looking in the right places. The conspiracy he had been sent to find was real. And the people running it had no idea that their most dangerous enemy was the clumsy human clerk, who could barely find his way to the bathroom. Marcus smiled to himself as he walked through the empty corridors. This was going to be a very interesting assignment. 3 weeks had passed since Marcus Chen arrived at Terminus Station. In that time, he had become the most invisible person on the entire outpost. Nobody noticed him. Nobody remembered his name. He was just the clumsy human who worked with cargo papers. This was exactly what Marcus wanted. He had learned that powerful people speak freely, and they think nobody important is listening. Aliens who would never share secrets with each other talked openly in front of him. After all, what could a simple human logistics clerk understand about galactic politics? Everything. Marcus understood everything. He sat in the corner of meeting rooms, pretending to organize files while diplomats discussed trade agreements. He delivered coffee to officials who spoke about military movements as if he was not there. He cleaned up after parties where wealthy merchants bragged about avoiding taxes and inspections, and every night, he went back to his small room and wrote down everything he had heard. His friendship with Zero had grown stronger. The Torvian translator had taken him under her wing like a protective older sister. She found his confusion about alien customs amusing. He tried to shake hands with a Vorthian. She laughed one afternoon. "Marcus, they communicate through smell. You've probably insulted his entire family, I didn't know," Marcus said, looking embarrassed. "Why doesn't anyone teach humans these things?" "Because most species think humans are too primitive to learn." Zira patted his shoulder kindly. "But I see you are trying. That is more than most humans who come here." Marcus smiled his nervous smile. "I just want to do my job well and not cause any problems." In truth, Marcus was causing many problems, just not the kind anyone could see. His reports had grown more detailed. Every week, he submitted long documents about cargo discrepancies. A container that was supposed to weigh 3,000 units actually weighed 3,047. A shipment scheduled to arrive at noon came at 12 minutes past. Small things. Tiny things. Things that nobody cared about. But Commander Vexari was starting to notice. She sat in her office one evening, reading through a stack of reports. Most of them were standard paperwork that required her signature. But one report caught her attention. It was from the human clerk in Building 7. The report documented weight differences in cargo shipments over the past month. By itself, this meant nothing. Weight measurements were never perfectly accurate. Small variations were normal, but the human had organized the data in an unusual way. He had sorted the discrepancies by origin point, by destination, and by the ships that carried them. When viewed this way, a pattern emerged. Certain ships from certain locations always had weight differences, and those differences were always in the same direction. The containers arrived heavier than their records claimed. Something was being added to those shipments. Something that was not on any manifest. Vexari felt a chill run down her spine. She had been a military commander for 40 years before taking this posting. She recognized intelligence work when she saw it. This report was not the work of a confused clerk. This was careful, professional analysis. She set the report aside and pulled up Marcus Chen's personnel file. The file was perfect. Too perfect. Birth records from Earth. Education at a standard human school. Work history at 3 different cargo facilities, each one confirming his employment. Everything checked out exactly as it should. In Vexari's experience, real personnel files were messy. People changed jobs unexpectedly. Records got lost. Dates did not always match. But this file was clean and neat, like someone had built it from a checklist. She sent a request to Earth Central Command for a deep verification. Whatever secrets this human was hiding, she intended to find them. Meanwhile, Marcus had bigger concerns. A delegation from the Varaxian Syndicate had arrived at the station. The Varaxians were a powerful species known for their military strength and their ruthless business practices. Officially, they were here to discuss trade agreements. Unofficially, everyone knew they were negotiating something much darker. Marcus had managed to get himself assigned as a server for their welcome dinner. He wore the uniform of station staff and carried trays of food and drinks. The Varaxians barely looked at him. To them, he was furniture with legs. He listened as they spoke with station officials in low voices. "The weapons will arrive in 6 shipments," said the lead Varaxian, a scarred female named Admiral Keth. "Each shipment must pass inspection without problems." Counselor Dreth nodded eagerly. "Everything is arranged. My people will handle the weight records. The containers will never be opened." "Good. The payment for your cooperation will be significant. But remember what happens to those who fail us." Marcus poured drinks and collected empty plates. His hands were steady. His face showed nothing but the blank expression of a servant doing his job, but inside, his mind was racing. Weapons. They were smuggling weapons through Terminus Station. Based on the conversation, this had been going on for months. Maybe years. He needed to know more. Where were the weapons going? Who would use them? What was the target? After the dinner ended, Marcus returned to his office. He worked through the night, cross-referencing his cargo data with the shipping routes the Varaxians had mentioned. The picture that emerged was terrifying. The weapons were being sent to 3 different locations. All 3 were near human colony worlds. All 3 were places where tensions between humans and other species had been rising. Someone was planning an attack, and they were using Terminus Station to move the weapons into position. Marcus finished his analysis as the station's artificial. Sun began to brighten for morning. He was exhausted but satisfied. He had enough information now to take action. He saved his work and encoded it using methods that would look like random numbers to anyone who found them. Then he went home to sleep. He did not know that Commander Vexari was awake in her own office, staring at a message that had just arrived from Earth Central Command. His verification request had triggered something. The response was encrypted at levels she did not have clearance to access. The human clerk named Marcus Chen had suddenly become the most interesting person on Terminus Station. And Vexari intended to find out why. The message from Earth Central Command changed everything. Commander Vexari stared at her screen for a long time. She had asked for a simple background check on a cargo clerk. Instead, she received a response that was classified at military intelligence levels. The message contained only 3 words: "Do not interfere." In her 40 years of service, Vexari had never seen anything like this. A junior logistics worker with files locked behind the highest security clearances? Something very strange was happening on her station. She was still thinking about this when her door chimed. Her assistant announced that Admiral Chun Watanabe from Earth Strategic Command had arrived for an unscheduled inspection. Vexari stood up sharply. Admirals did not make unscheduled visits to remote outposts, especially not admirals from Strategic Command, which handled the most sensitive human operations. The woman who walked into her office was small by human standards. With gray hair pulled back tight and eyes that missed nothing, she wore a simple uniform with few decorations, but she carried herself like someone who commanded entire fleets. "Commander Vexari," the admiral said. "Thank you for seeing me without notice, Admiral Chunwatanabe. I was not aware Earth Command had concerns about this station." The admiral smiled slightly. "We have concerns about many things. I understand you recently requested verification on one of your staff members." Vexari's forehands tightened. "So that was why the admiral was here. I found some irregularities in his reports. I wanted to ensure his credentials were legitimate." "And what did you conclude?" "I concluded that someone does not want me asking questions about Marcus Chin." The admiral nodded slowly. "You are as sharp as your record suggests, Commander. Walk with me." They walked through the station together. The admiral asked questions about operations, about security, about the various species who passed through. She seemed interested in everything but talked about nothing important. Finally, they reached Building 7. Through the window, Vexari could see Marcus Chen at his desk, carefully checking documents with his usual nervous concentration. "Tell me about him," the admiral said. "He makes constant mistakes. The other workers think he is incompetent." Vexari paused. "But his reports are not the work of an incompetent man." "No, they are not." "Who is he?" The admiral watched the young man through the window. Something soft crossed her hard face for just a moment. "He is exactly who he needs to be. That is all you need to know for now." Later that day, the admiral requested a private meeting with Marcus Chin. They met in a small conference room that, Vexari knew, was shielded against listening devices. The meeting lasted 2 hours. When it ended, both humans left through separate doors. Their faces showed nothing. But that evening, everything began to move. Zira found Marcus in the cafeteria, eating alone as usual. She sat across from him and studied his face. "Something is different about you today," she said. Marcus looked up with his familiar, uncertain smile. "What do you mean?" "I do not know. You seem ... focused, like you were thinking about something important. Just tired. Long day?" But Zira was not convinced. She had spent weeks watching this human. She had seen him struggle with simple tasks and apologize for countless mistakes. Today, his movements seemed different, sharper, more deliberate. She reached across the table and touched his hand. "Marcus, are you in some kind of trouble?" For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. It looked almost like guilt. Then his nervous expression returned. "No trouble, I promise. Just trying to do my job." Zira wanted to believe him. But she had been a translator for many years. She knew how to read faces, even alien ones. And right now, the face of her human friend was lying to her. That night, the admiral assembled a small team in a secure room. Commander Vexari was there, along with 3 Earth military officers who had arrived on the admiral's ship. The admiral activated a holographic display. It showed Marcus Chin's cargo reports. It's organized into patterns and connections that revealed the full scope of the smuggling operation. "For the past 5 weeks, one of our operatives has been documenting evidence of weapons smuggling through this station," the admiral said. "The weapons are being transported to staging areas near 3 human colony worlds. Analysis suggests a coordinated attack is planned within the next 2 months. Vexari leaned forward. "The Varaxian Syndicate." "Correct. They are working with corrupt officials on this station. Counselor Dreth is the primary contact, but there are others. Why was I not informed of this operation? Because we did not know who could be trusted. Your recent investigation of our operative convinced us that you are not involved in the conspiracy." Vexari was not sure if she should feel insulted or relieved. "What happens now?" "Now we act. The Varaxian delegation is still on the station. They believe their operation is secure. They are wrong." The next morning, station security moved quickly and quietly. Counselor Dreth was arrested in his quarters. 3 other officials were taken from their offices. Communication systems were locked down. No messages could leave the station. The Varaxian delegation discovered what was happening when they tried to contact their ships. Their vessels had been disabled by something that fried their navigation systems. Earth's military ships were already moving into position around them. Admiral Keth, the scarred Varaxian commander, demanded to speak with whoever was responsible. She was brought to the conference room where Commander Vexari waited with the admiral. "Hey, this is an act of war," Keth snarled. "The Syndicate will not tolerate such insults." Admiral Chun Watanabe stepped forward. "The Syndicate will accept whatever consequences follow from planning attacks on human colonies. We have complete documentation of your operation. Every shipment, every bribe, every weapon possible. Our security was perfect. Your security had one weakness." The admiral pressed a button on the table. The door opened. Marcus Chen walked in. He did not look nervous anymore. He did not smile uncertainly or shuffle his feet. He walked with the confident stride of a soldier, and his eyes were cold and sharp. "Hello, Admiral Keth," he said. "We have not been properly introduced. My name is Lieutenant Commander Marcus Chun Watanabe. I have been watching you for 5 weeks, and I am very good at my job." Keth stared at him. Her face went pale beneath her scales. She recognized him now as the servant who had poured drinks at her dinner, the invisible human she had ignored completely. "Ow. That is impossible," she whispered. "No," Marcus replied. "It is human." The truth about Marcus Chen spread through Terminus Station like fire. He was not a confused logistics clerk from Earth. He was Lieutenant Commander Marcus Chen Watanabe, one of the most decorated deep-cover operatives in human military intelligence. Admiral Chun Watanabe was his mother, and together they came from a family that had been protecting humanity for 3 generations. The nervous young man who could not find his way to the bathroom had single-handedly exposed the largest weapons smuggling operation in decades. His careful reports, filed day after day in a dusty corner of Building 7, had saved 3 colony worlds from devastating attacks. Commander Vexari stood in her office, reading through the full mission briefing that the Admiral had finally shared with her. Marcus had been placed on Terminus Station 6 months before he officially arrived. His personnel records, his work history, his entire identity had been carefully constructed to make him invisible. "I have commanded this station for 12 years, Vexari said to the Admiral. "I have worked with spies and diplomats and criminals. I never suspected him for a moment." "That is why he is the best," Admiral Chun Watanabe replied. "My son learned early that the most dangerous weapon is not a gun or a ship. It is the ability to be underestimated." Across the station, the arrested conspirators were being processed for transport to detention facilities. Counselor Dreth had already begun confessing everything he knew, hoping for mercy. The other corrupt officials followed his example. Nobody wanted to face Varaxian punishment for failure, and Earth's justice seemed gentler by comparison. Admiral Keth and her delegation remained under guard in their quarters. Their disabled ships floated helplessly while Earth's military vessels kept watch. The Varaxian Syndicate would have to answer for their planned attacks, and the evidence against them was overwhelming. But not everyone on the station felt grateful for what had happened. Zero found Marcus in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. He wore his military uniform now, instead of his clerk clothes. He looked like a completely different person. "You lied to me," she said. Marcus turned to face her. His expression was calm, but she could see something like pain in his eyes. "Yes, I did. Everything. Every story about Earth. Every time you asked for my help. Every moment we spent together. All lies, no." He stepped toward her. "Not everything. My mission required me to become someone else. But the person who sat with you in the cafeteria, who listened to your stories, who laughed at your jokes, ... that was real. You were the only real thing in my life here." Zero did not know whether to believe him. "How can I trust anything you say?" "You cannot. I know that, and I am sorry. But I want you to understand something." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "My mission was to stop an attack that would have killed millions of humans. I could not let anything interfere with that. Not my comfort. Not my feelings. Not even our friendship. So I was just a tool. Someone to teach you alien customs, so you could spy more effectively. At first, yes, that is the truth. But somewhere along the way, it changed. You became my friend. And hiding that from you was the hardest part of this entire operation. Zero stood silent for a long moment. She thought about the weeks they had spent together. She remembered how Marcus had listened to her problems, how he had made her laugh, how he had seemed so genuinely interested in understanding her world. "I do not know if I can forgive you," she finally said. "I am not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that it mattered." You mattered. Before she could respond, an alarm began blaring throughout the station. Marcus moved instantly. The thoughtful man having an emotional conversation disappeared. In his place stood a soldier reacting to danger. "What is happening?" Zira asked. "The Varaxians. They must have called for backup before we blocked their communications." He was right. 3 Varaxian assault troops had somehow gotten aboard the station through an emergency airlock. They were making their way toward the detention area where Admiral Keth was being held. Marcus pulled a small weapon from his uniform. "Stay here," he told Zira. "Lock the door behind me." "Marcus, there are 3 of them, and 1 of you. I know." He smiled. It was not the nervous smile she remembered. It was something harder and more dangerous. "I have faced worse odds." He moved through the station corridors with speed and precision that seemed impossible for a human. His weeks of pretending to be lost had actually been careful mapping of every passage, every shortcut, every place where someone could hide. The Varaxian soldiers were large and heavily armed. They were trained killers who had fought in dozens of battles. They did not expect any real resistance on a civilian station. They did not expect Aquas Watanabe. The first soldier fell before he even knew he was under attack. Marcus came from the shadows, struck with perfect accuracy, and disappeared again. The second soldier spun around, firing wildly at nothing. Marcus was already behind him. The third soldier was smarter. She retreated to a defensive position and called for Marcus to show himself. "1 human against 3 Varaxian warriors," she shouted. "Even if you beat us, more will come. Your species is weak. You hide behind tricks and deception because you cannot face us directly." Marcus stepped out of the shadows. He stood in the open corridor, his weapon lowered. "We're right," he said. "Humans are physically weaker than most species. We do not have scales or claws or forearms. We die easily. But you forgot something important about us." "What is that?" "We do not give up. We do not surrender. And we will do whatever it takes to protect our people." The soldier raised her weapon. Marcus moved. What happened next took less than 3 seconds. When it was over, the third soldier was on the ground, and Marcus was not even breathing hard. Station security arrived moments later. They found Marcus standing among 3 unconscious Varaxian soldiers, looking like he had done nothing more difficult than paperwork. Commander Vexari was with the security team. She stared at the scene with all 4 eyes wide. "You did this alone?" "They underestimated me," Marcus said simply. "Most species do. That is why humans learn to be patient, to watch, to wait, and to strike when our enemies least expect it." He walked past her toward the medical bay, where Zero was waiting. She had ignored his orders to stay hidden and had watched the entire fight through a security monitor. When he reached her, she threw her arms around him. "I thought you were going to die," she said. "I almost did." Several times over the past 5 weeks, he held her gently. "But I could not die before I told you the truth, even if you hate me for it." Zero pulled back and looked at his face. The hard soldier was gone. In his eyes, she saw the same person who had shared meals with her and asked clumsy questions about alien customs. "I do not hate you," she said quietly. "I am angry. I feel betrayed. But I do not hate you. That is more than I deserve." "Yes, it is. But perhaps that is what friends do. They give more than the other person deserves." For the first time since his cover was blown, Marcus felt something loosen in his chest. The mission was not complete yet. There would be reports to file, and prisoners to transport, and diplomatic problems to solve. But in this moment, standing with the one real friend he had made on the station, He allowed himself to feel something like hope. 6 months had passed since the events that made Terminus Station famous across the galaxy. The story had spread to every corner of known space. A single human, armed with nothing but patience and paperwork, had exposed a conspiracy that the best intelligence agencies had missed for years. The Varaxian Syndicate had been forced to pay massive reparations to the colony worlds they had planned to attack. Admiral Keth and her co-conspirators were serving long sentences in Galactic prison, and Lieutenant Commander Marcus Chunwat-Nabe had become a legend. He sat in Admiral Chunwat-Nabe's office on Earth, listening to her offer him a promotion. She wanted him to take command of the Intelligence Analysis Division. It was a desk job with excellent pay and complete safety. "You have earned this," his mother said. "After everything you have sacrificed, you deserve to rest." Marcus looked out the window at the blue sky of his homeworld. He had not seen this sky in almost a year. It was beautiful, peaceful, safe. "I cannot accept," he said. "I expected you would say that. There are other conspiracies out there, other threats to our colonies and our people. Someone needs to find them before they become crises." The Admiral sighed. She had known her son would refuse the safe option. He was too much like his father, who had died on an undercover mission 20 years ago. The Chun Watanabe family gave everything for humanity, even when it cost them everything in return. "Where will you go?" she asked. "There is a mining station near the border of Cretheon space. Intelligence suggests someone is smuggling restricted technology through their supply lines. I have already prepared my cover identity." Another confused clerk who cannot find his way around. Marcus smiled. A nervous botanist this time. Someone who studies plants and does not understand technology. The perfect person to overlook in a tech smuggling operation. His mother stood and hugged him tightly. "Be careful. I always am." "No, you are not. You take terrible risks and somehow survive through luck and skill. But luck runs out eventually, then I will have to rely on skill." He left Earth the next day. Meanwhile, on Terminus Station, things had changed dramatically. Commander Vexari had implemented new security protocols based on what she learned from the Marcus Chen incident. The most important rule was simple: never underestimate the quiet ones, especially the humans. Young officers at the station now studied Marcus's reports as examples of intelligence work. They learned how small details could reveal big secrets. They learned the value of patience and careful observation. Zero had found a new purpose as well. She had become an unofficial ambassador, teaching other species about human culture and history. Her lectures were popular because she could explain why humans behaved the way they did. "They come from a dangerous world," she told a group of young Kelthian officers one afternoon. "Their planet tried to kill them with ice ages, volcanoes, predators, and disease. They survived by learning to adapt to anything. They watched their environment, identified threats, and found ways to overcome them. But they seem so weak," one officer said. "Small bodies, no natural weapons, short lifespans. That is what makes them dangerous. They know they are weak, so they developed other strengths: patience, creativity, the ability to work together across generations. A human operative will spend years building a cover identity that you will dismiss in seconds. And by the time you realize your mistake, it is already too late." The officers looked uncomfortable. They had grown up being taught that humans were a minor species, not worth serious attention. Now they were learning that this attitude was exactly what humans counted on. After her lecture, Zero returned to her quarters and found a message waiting. It was from Marcus. The message was short and contained no sensitive information. He simply told her that he was well, that he thought of her often, and that he hoped she was happy. He signed it with the name of his new cover identity, a small joke that made her smile. She wrote back immediately. She told him about her new work, about the changes on the station, about the small events of her daily life. She knew he might not receive her message for weeks or months, depending on where his mission had taken him. But she wanted him to know that their friendship had survived his deception. She ended her message with words that surprised even herself: "Come back safely. The galaxy needs people like you. And so do I." Far across the galaxy, Marcus arrived at his new assignment. The mining station was dirty and chaotic, full of workers who cared only about meeting their quotas. Nobody paid attention to the nervous human botanist who kept getting lost in the corridors. He made mistakes. He asked foolish questions. He apologized constantly for his confusion. And when nobody was watching, he observed everything. Within his first week, he had identified 3 suspicious shipments, 2 corrupted officials, and 1 hidden communication relay that should not have existed. The smuggling operation was larger than intelligence had predicted. Someone was moving enough restricted technology to arm a small fleet. Marcus smiled to himself as he filed his first report. This assignment would take months, maybe years. He would have to be patient. He would have to be careful. He would have to become completely invisible. It was exactly the kind of challenge he loved. Outside his small quarters, the station continued its noisy operations. Workers argued and machines hummed and ships came and went without any attention to the quiet botanist in the corner. They did not know that humanity's most dangerous weapon was already among them. A weapon that did not shoot or explode, but simply watched and waited and remembered everything. The galaxy kept underestimating humans, and humans like Marcus Chun Watanabe kept making them pay for that mistake. Somewhere on Terminus Station, Zero looked up at the stars and wondered where her friend was tonight. She hoped he was safe. She hoped he would return someday, and she knew with absolute certainty that whatever enemy he was facing right now had no idea what was coming for them. That was the human way. Quiet, patient, deadly, and absolutely unstoppable.